Hey guys, welcome to the Max Invest YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a couple of big bits of news surrounding Ethereum. I'm also going to be discussing Chainlink's fair sequencing service and how Chainlink proposes to resolve MEV. Of course, if you enjoy the video, remember to like and subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, and remember, nothing in this video is financial advice. The first big bit of news is that Three Arrows Capital bought 156,000 Ethereum. Now, 156,000 Ethereum is worth $400 million, which is an absolutely massive amount. Now, the reason that this news is so big is just a couple of weeks ago, Zhu started talking about how much he hates Ethereum. Zhu said that Ethereum has abandoned its users, and he said a whole bunch of other mean things about Ethereum, and then he proceeded to trash a lot of the developers in the Ethereum ecosystem. Of course, what this did is a lot of people gathered together and started hating on Ethereum, and Zhu really brought a huge wave of hate to Ethereum. It was quite difficult and frustrating to be in the Ethereum community at this time. However, as we can see, Zhu has then gone on to buy hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Ether immediately after this tweet. He didn't even wait a couple of months, he began buying it a few days after this tweet. So in my mind, what this shows me that Zhu is doing, Zhu is trying to pump his other coins that he's holding, such as Avalanche, and then he's trying to use all of his followers as exit liquidity, and then he is trying to buy Ethereum at a cheaper price. So he's trying to trash Ethereum and say he hates Ethereum so much to potentially drop the price and then purchase a bit more Ether at a cheaper price. Overall, this shows that Zhu is willing to manipulate his followers, and he probably isn't too different than a lot of VCs. Definitely something to take note of in the space, and if you ever see a VC trying to manipulate you one way, it's probably best just to not listen to them whatsoever. Now, the next big bit of news that I want to talk about is surrounding Arbitrum and Chainlink. Essentially, Chainlink's fair sequencing services are going to be implemented on Arbitrum. Now, this is something that we've known about for a while, however, Arbitrum are just announcing it right now, which is very, very good to see. Essentially, what Chainlink's fair sequencing service tries to do is it tries to reduce MEV on a blockchain. Now, MEV is minor extractable value in a proof of work system, or its maximum extractable value in a proof of stake system. What MEV means is it means that miners or validators will reorder transactions in order to favor themselves. So what will happen is they'll get a bunch of transactions coming their way, and it's their job to process those transactions. Of course, what they can do is they can actually look at the details of these transactions and order it in a way that means they get the maximum amount of money possible. What this does is it means that the end users lose a little bit of money and the miners or the validators gain more money from gaming the system. A quick disclosure is I'm not an expert on MEV, however MEV is one of the biggest problems in blockchain right now. All blockchain networks suffer from MEV such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Avalanche, and MEV continues to go on and there haven't been any solutions for it. Of course, Chainlink are coming out with a solution for MEV, and from what I can tell, it looks like a very good solution. Essentially, what Chainlink are doing is they're adding fair sequencing services. Now, fair sequencing services will essentially order the transactions in a fair way before the validators or the miners can actually process these transactions, which should help reduce MEV. As we can see, Chainlink want to implement MEV in Arbitrum and make Arbitrum MEV resistant. Currently, we don't really have a date on when Arbitrum are going to implement fair sequencing services, and it is quite difficult for me to speculate. However, this was originally announced at the Chainlink SmartCon, which happened in August, so it would be good to see this happen within at least 1 year from the announcement, and hopefully we can get it before mid next year. However, we will need to see what actually happens with this MEV resistance. The technicalities of Chainlink's fair sequencing services are quite complicated. However, I will do my best to try and understand and explain them in this video. Essentially, the first phase of Chainlink's fair sequencing is casual ordering. Essentially, what would normally happen is a bunch of transactions would come down to an Arbitrum sequencer. This Arbitrum sequencer would reorder the transactions by looking at their details details and then process them. However, the way it's going to work under fair sequencing is all of the transactions will come down to the Arbitrum sequencer. The Arbitrum sequencer will not be able to see the details of the transactions as they'll be encrypted, and these transactions will be ordered separately by Chainlink nodes. So these Chainlink nodes will order the transactions in a fair way as they'll be economically incentivized to do so. They'll deliver these transactions back to the Arbitrum network, and then Arbitrum will process these transactions after they've been ordered. So all this is doing is it's getting Chainlink to order the transactions in a decentralized way, and then Arbitrum to process these transactions once they have been ordered. It sounds quite confusing at first, but if you really break it down to the most basic information, it's not too difficult. There will then be another phase. However, if I'm being honest, I don't understand this phase fully, but it seems like an expansion on the first phase. Now, fair sequencing services are very good for Arbitrum, and one thing that they'll help Arbitrum do is they'll actually decentralize the sequences. Currently, Arbitrum has a few central points of failure because it's new and it's on training wheels, and when we see fair sequencing services roll out, it may actually help Arbitrum become decentralized, which is going to be very, very good. So that's all of the news that I wanted to talk about with Chainlink, and now I want to discuss a few final bits of news. The first bit of news that I want to talk about is that OpenSea, everyone's favorite NFT platform, is going to be going public. OpenSea is going to be doing an initial public offering onto the stock market, and it will be interesting to see what valuation they'll get. I would expect they'll probably get roughly a $20 billion valuation, however I don't really know. This news has recently stirred up a lot of controversy in the crypto space. The reason for this is because OpenSea are a crypto business, so it would make sense for them just to release a token. Now, if OpenSea released a token onto the markets, we'd probably all get airdrops, and we'd probably all get a little bit of money. However, OpenSea seem not to be going down the token path, and they seem to be going public as a company. Of course, in my token airdrop video, I mentioned OpenSea as a potential place to get a token airdrop. However, it seems that this is not going to be the case, and this is of course quite disappointing. Regardless, it is a little bit odd, and I was hoping that OpenSea would try to decentralize their front end. However, going public as a company means they probably won't be doing this. Of course, OpenSea has decentralized smart contracts and decentralized NFTs. However, the UI and all of the front end is controlled by a central party, and now it's controlled by a US public company, so you can take this information as you will. Now, the final bit of news that I briefly wanted to touch over is that Vitalik just wrote an article for Ethereum's Endgame. It basically said how Ethereum is going to go over the next 5 or so years, what improvements Ethereum is going to be making, and how they will be doing it. Now, I haven't looked into this article enough to give a full detailed breakdown of it. I've read over it roughly 4 or 5 times right now, and it is something difficult to get your head around. I've talked a lot about Ethereum's roadmap in the past couple of weeks, so I don't want to go into it too much just yet in this video. However, if you do want a dedicated video on Vitalik Butterin's article, leave it down in the comments below. Regardless, this is a very, very good read, and I will link it down in the description. It's definitely worth reading. Now, after you've read that, it's a good idea to then go on and read Polyneur's Endgame, and Polyneur extends on Vitalik Butterin's article. Essentially, Vitalik Butterin gives a very pragmatic and realistic endgame for Ethereum, and Polyneur extends on that and gives a very fanciful and adventurous endgame, where he extends on a lot of concepts and tries to look at what would be theoretically possible and what possibly could be achieved. Of course, Polyneur is an Ethereum developer, however he is a content creator, and it is another interesting read. So I would recommend you read these 2 articles, and I'll leave them in the description below. Anyway, this brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, help us get to 1,000 subscribers, and thanks for watching the video.